Hi, I'm Jen Spencer, and this is Jen Spencer's 10-Minute Book Club. Hi, readers. I'm so excited to be here today. We have an amazing author. Her name is Rachel Fordham. She's actually a relative. She's my cousin's daughter, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in the interview. As always, if you ask a question or leave a comment in the comment section below, you'll be entered to win a copy of one of Rachel's books, A Life Once Dreamed, and also a copy of my book, Dandelion Meadows, which is a small town romantic comedy contemporary that I think you're going to love. So I'm so excited to introduce Rachel Fordham. Rachel, welcome to the 10-Minute Book Club. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Rachel is related to me. My cousin is her mother, and
Yep.
I kind of didn't even know that she existed because she lives up in Washington, and a couple 3 or 4 years ago she contacted me and said, hey, my mom's your cousin and I know you're a writer and I want to get into writing, and so we started this relationship and it's been so fun and we've become really good friends and just been so fun to know somebody that I should probably know already. So
No, it's been great. I've loved it.
Well, tell us about yourself so that readers can kind of get a feel for you and your books.
Sure. So I am busy. I have 6 kids and we foster. I actually have a new foster baby coming over tonight, and my kids are all busy in sports. My husband's a dentist. It's a really good life, but it's busy. For writing, I've only ever published historical romances so far, but I actually have a contemporary in the works. And so fingers crossed, you'll get to read that soon. I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago now when I just had my 5th baby and I just felt like I needed a creative outlet. And that's when I started writing. I just wanted to try something new. And so that's kind of, then it all just sort of fell into place and happened.
So your historicals are kind of historical Westerns. They're kind of, I've read a couple of them and they're wonderful.
Yeah.
And they're kind of, what is the setting and kind of the time period that you're writing in?
Yeah. So I have several that have been set in Iowa in the late 1800s, and that just kind of happened by chance because my debut novel has Orphan Train history, and that was a popular state for the orphan trains to go through. And then I ended up thinking it was fun to have little secondary characters pop up in other books, and so I stayed in Iowa for a few books, but I do have some that have been in the Dakota territories or upstate New York. So they're not limited to Iowa, but that's been the one that I've popped up in the most.
So tell readers about the Orphan Train, because I didn't know anything about it until I read that book of yours, and it was just fascinating. Is that the Hope of Azure Springs, right? That's where that comes in.
Yeah, and I hadn't heard about it either. And since then I've realized that there are a lot of other novels that deal with it, but kind of before foster care, before all of that, there was a problem in the cities of foundlings and orphans and, like child prostitution, just a whole kinds of, like these kids on the streets. And so I think it was one of those things that started with like good intentions, but obviously like there were some negative consequences of it, but they started saying, well, this isn't working having all these kids on the streets. And so they started shipping them out to like farming communities and smaller communities where the big family was advantageous. And so they'd get adopted along the way. Sometimes they were treated really poorly. I read a lot of accounts before writing that book. Sometimes they were treated really poorly and sometimes, they were loved like family. And so it worked well sometimes. And then there's a lot of sad stories too, which I tried really hard in my debut to kind of represent the happy and the sad that came out of the Orphan Train movement. Yeah.
Well, so if I remember, like they take these kids to the train station and then the parents would just be there and they just pick the child they wanted and then move on to the next town.
And it kind of depended on town to town. So like a lot of times, the train would be coming and they'd make arrangements with like the preacher or pastor in the town and ask if they could like set up kind of like an auction, which sounds awful, but kind of like a chance for the families to get to know the children. Some places were very good about screening the parents, and other places it was like, we just need to put this kid anywhere. And so they would, there wasn't really any follow-up or making sure that those kids were safe. So, you know, kind of both extremes. Yeah.
Wow. Well, okay. So tell us about the book that you're giving away today.
What?
So tell us about this book that you're giving away today.
I think that I am going to do Life Once Dreams. It is not my most recent book, but it was kind of my COVID baby. It came out early in COVID, and I feel like it got a little forgotten in the chaos of stuff. So I think it's just a fun one to talk about, because I don't know, like all my public events got canceled that had been planned. People hadn't really started doing Zoom events yet. And it just kind of, you know, it's kind of my forgotten little COVID baby. So I would be excited to share it with someone.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us about it. What's it about?
Yeah. Well, we just talked about orphan trains, and this is not an orphan train book, but it has a lot to do with like illegitimate children and kind of the stigma that came with it. It was inspired by, did you ever see the movie Blossoms in the Dust? Do you remember that movie?
Oh, no, I've never even heard of it.
It's okay. It's super old. But in the movie, it focuses on this woman named Edna Gladney. I think I said her name right. And she, it was like in the 1930s, and she just spent her life like trying to change the stigma against illegitimate children. So she tried to get it where birth certificates no longer said like no surname or illegitimate or any of those things off of the birth certificate, because she worked in orphanages and people wouldn't want to adopt illegitimate children. And so the stigma, you know, followed them. There was laws about how they couldn't inherit and all these things. And so I was reading about her, and because I'm a foster parent, and I take in kids who, you know, like sometimes the stigma of their life follows them. You know, people will be like, oh, they can't succeed. They were born around drugs or whatever. And so it's just a cause that resonated with me. And so I didn't get to put Edna in my book because my book takes place earlier than the 1930s. It takes place in the late 1800s. But I just decided to explore what that could do to someone's life as they're trying to navigate that. And then it has like a second chance romance in it, which was a lot of fun, because this was my first book that I wrote where the characters knew each other before the book opened. And so it was a lot easier to have chemistry faster than, you know, people who had just met. So that was really fun. So I don't know, it has a big piece of my heart in it, because I don't know, I'm just a sucker for kids who've had a hard life.
Oh yeah, I love that. Okay. So I knew that you had fostered children, and how many have you fostered, and have you adopted any of those? Or is it pretty temporary in your case?
So we've been foster parents for 5 years now, and because I already have 6 children, they only licensed me for 1 kid. So I'm not like some people who've had just like kid after kid come in, because if I have a kid who stays for a long time, then there's just that kid for that long time. So I've had 2 girls that both stayed with me for 1.5 years that I had kind of hoped would stay forever. Like they still have a piece of my heart. And honestly, it was the hardest thing ever when they left. And then I have had, I think 5 or 6 little boys that have been short-term, where I knew that they were short-term. And so it didn't feel the same. It was good. And I am so glad I did it, but it didn't have the same loss when they left. And so no, I haven't adopted. We've always been open to it. But we've also not been picky about who comes. Like, I mean, we've been picky in that they need to be safe around our kids, but we have not been exclusively looking for kids who we thought we would end up adopting. For us, it was really, it felt like something we were supposed to do, and a place that we were supposed to help in, not based on any certain outcomes we wanted.
Wow, that's amazing. So are most of those kids, like the boys that you fostered, they go back to their parents or one of their parents? Is that kind of, when you take them in, that's kind of what the expectation is?
Well, I think that the goal with foster care initially is always to reunify a family. But my case has not been that they've always returned home. Some of them have. A lot of times, So like my first little girl ended up having a relative surface, and the state chose the relative to move her to the relative. For the little boys, it was a lot of different things. Like I took one little boy, knowing that his aunt was trying to get cleared so she could take him. So I knew that when I got him. So he was just with me for like, I don't know, a couple weeks. And then sometimes like they're involved in drug court where I don't know if you know how that works, but they'll get like, if they fail, they get like little punishments, so not punishments, but like different consequences along the way. And so if they had to go spend a night in jail or something, then the kids would just go stay at a home for a night or two. So it's just, every story is actually really different. My last little girl did go home to her bio parent, and we've actually been able to keep in touch with her really well. They come over usually at least once a week, which is its own complicated thing, but it's really good that she still has connections. So,
Yeah.
So there's just every time is its own story.
Wow, so interesting. Well, okay, we're almost done. This goes really fast.
It does, yeah.
Tell me, what is your favorite romantic movie?
Ooh, I'm not good on the spot. Okay, I know this is my favorite romantic movie, and it's not even a movie, but I just tried my first Korean drama, and it was really good. So
I love those. So which one are you?
I watched Crash Landing on You. Have you ever seen that one?
Yes, that's the first Korean drama I watched. Loved it.
Okay. Yeah, and I'd been like, it was a friend who got me to watch it with her, and I was like, I'll do it because I get to hang out with you. But I really love patience, and it was so good. And I just love like that slow burn where like when their hands touch, you can feel it. Like it just, the pacing was just really great. So it was
yeah, that's a good one. I love that one. My only complaint about that is they said goodbye like 8 times. You thought, this is the end. Yeah. And then it was the end again. No, but I loved it. And
I think that they acknowledge that though. They say, we keep saying, I can't believe we have to keep saying goodbye. And so it at least felt like they owned it,
they owned it. That's true.
We could just say I rewrote the ending in my head, and my ending was better. But I really loved this show. So.
Yes. Okay, last question. You're stuck on a desert island. Would you rather have a lifetime supply of chocolate or toilet paper?
Toilet paper. Chocolate's not my weakness, but other sugar is. So.
Okay, so that's good to know. So chocolate is usually people's weakness, but not always. So
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll eat it. But
well, Rachel, thank you so much. It's been great. It's so great to see you again and just visit. And readers, remember that if you ask a question or make a comment, you'll be able to win a copy. You'll be entered to win a copy of one of Rachel's books and my latest book, Dandelion Meadows. So please ask away or make a comment. Rachel, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.